Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss a new topic of electrostatics, that is divergence theorem and Stokes theorem. This divergence theorem and Stokes theorem uh, are the two theorems which are useful in various laws of electrostatics as well as magnetostatics. In order to compute the differential part of Gauss law or Biot-Savart law, we require this Stokes theorem as well as divergence theorem. Let us take a recap of what we discussed in the previous lecture. In the previous lecture, we discussed various operations possible with the del operator, that are gradient of a scalar, then divergence of a vector, curl of a vector, like this. We also discussed how to memorize the formula of gradient for three coordinate system. We tried to solve this particular problem of a gradient of a scalar. We also discussed how to memorize or recall the formula of divergence of a vector in Cartesian, cylindrical as well as spherical system. How to memorize this formula, that is very important. Then we try to solve this particular problem, example on divergence of a vector, wherein we took three vectors on three coordinate system and we tried to compute the divergence of these three vector fields with the help of these three formula of divergence. Then we discussed curl of a vector, curl formula in three coordinate systems, and we discussed that the differential lengths in Cartesian system, dx dy dz. So the first formula is very simple to memorize. How to memorize the second formula? Only one additional term r, one r term is missing here because the differential lengths are dr, r, d phi, dz. So r is missing here in the second row. That's why it is compensated in the first row here, r, and in the third row here. As well as this missing part is also compensated outside this particular bracket, outside this mod sign. And in the case of third formula, what exactly missing in the differential lengths? Dr, r d theta, r sin theta, d phi. So r is missing. So compensate it on first row, compensate it in third row, as well as compensate it in outside this particular mod bracket. Here sin theta is missing, r sin theta is missing, so it is compensated in the first row, third row, as well as outside this particular bracket. So this way the formula of curl of a vector in spherical system can be memorized. And then we try to solve the problem of curl of a given vector p bar and q bar with the help of this formula. Now today we will discuss what exactly divergence theorem is. Divergence theorem, in simple word, is useful to compute, or it is useful to convert surface integral of any vector into a volume integral of divergence of that vector. So what exactly the statement is? Divergence theorem states that total outward flux of a vector field A through a closed surface is same as volume integral of divergence of A. So there are 2-3 elements in this particular definition. So one by one we will cover it. For example, what exactly this left hand side is? In left hand side there is a surface integral, because ds is involved, that means integration. So surface integral of what? Of A bar. Surface integral of A bar. And what is this? This is dv and this is integration. So dv is nothing but a variable. Okay, it is a independent variable here in this right hand side. So it is doing what? It is taking the volume integral of this particular bracket, volume integral of del dot A, that means divergence of A. So surface integral of A on left side and volume integral of divergence of A on right side we find here on the screen. It means that as these two are shown to be equal with each other, that means surface integral of A bar is exactly equal to volume integral of divergence of A bar. And this is what the divergence theorem is. Divergence theorem states that the total outward flux of a vector field A, any vector field A, any vector, not necessary that you have to use A here, it can be B, it can be C, but if here is suppose you on the left side, if you take vector, suppose for example H bar, then obviously the same H bar you have to put on the right side somewhere here. Okay, because the divergence theorem is a universal theorem, and Stokes theorem is also universal theorem. It is applicable to any vector. Any word is very important. It is applicable to any vector field, not necessary each time A bar. Okay, so in short, surface integral of any vector field is exactly equal to volume integral of divergence of that vector field, and this is nothing but divergence theorem. Okay, you understood? It is very simple. So in other words, what exactly the application of this divergence theorem? Divergence theorem is useful to convert surface integral into volume integral or volume integral into surface integral. Sometimes the dimensions of surface integral you know, okay, or volume integral you know, then accordingly you can convert it into the other part. Means this left hand side is exactly equal to right hand side. So if you are comfortable in computation of surface integral, go with the left hand side. If you are comfortable with the right hand side volume integral, go with the right hand side. But here you have to remember is that what exactly this ds is. Ds is, if you can recall back, it is nothing but a differential surface. Recall back the three coordinate system. In three coordinate system, which are the three differential lengths? In three coordinate system, the three differential lengths were differential surfaces were ds x bar, ds y bar, ds z bar, ds r bar, ds phi bar, ds z bar, ds r bar, ds theta bar, and ds phi bar. How to memorize this? Obviously with the help of these differential lengths: dx, dy, dz, dr, r d phi, dz, dr, r d theta, r sin theta, d phi. So these differential lengths are useful to construct these differential surfaces. And once you you understood, these differential surfaces are very important and crucial factors in the next laws coming on the way in this subject. So differential surfaces, this particular concept came from these three coordinate systems. So differential surface exactly means what? Differential means, the word differential means very small. Differential surface means very small surface. The surface which is almost tends to a zero dimension. Okay, similarly differential length and differential volume means very small length and very small volume respectively. And here you can note down ds can be either ds x bar, ds y bar, ds z bar. If you are dealing with the spherical coordinate system, for example, then your differential surface can be either in r direction, it can be in theta direction, or it can be in phi direction. So differential surfaces are three in each coordinate system, as well as very important note is it is different for three different directions. Differential surface is different for different directions in each coordinate system. Now let us come back to our definition of divergence theorem. Here we find that surface integral of any vector field is exactly equal to volume integral of divergence of that vector field. Surface integral of any vector field is exactly equal to volume integral of divergence of that field. Now if you can recall back, just I shown you the slides including the differential surfaces of three systems. ds can be anything. Okay, in that ds, surface always has two dimensions. One is length and one is breadth. For example, what is the value of ds? What is dsx in case of Cartesian system? It is dy into dz, dy into dz. ds x is equal to, how to calculate the ds x bar? dy into dz into ax cap. So differential surface in x direction would be equal to multiplication of remaining two differential lengths, that are dy into dz, and direction of that surface is ax cap. So you can remember, you can note is how many independent variables are there. dy is one variable and dz is one variable. That means whenever you deal with surface integral, basically there are two integration symbols. Okay, that means first integration is with first variable, and this second integration is for second variable. This you have to remember always. Now let us stick to Cartesian coordinate system only. In Cartesian system, the differential volume is how much? Differential volume can be obtained by multiplying three differential lengths of that system. For example, in Cartesian system, differential volume will be equal to dx into dy and into dz. So how many variables are there? How many independent variables are there? 1, this is 2, and this is 3. Okay, it means differential volume involves three variables, dx, dy, dz. That means this dv is nothing but, it constitutes three variables. So integration of this dv means integration of dx, dy, dz. That means there are triple integration. So here there will be three integrations. First integration is with first variable, second integration is with second variable, and third integration is with third variable. So this way also you have to understand this particular divergence theorem. So in divergence theorem, surface integral can be converted into volume integral, or volume integral can be converted into surface integral. And the proper definition is surface integral of any vector field is exactly equal to volume integral of divergence of that vector field, because del dot a bar or del dot vector is nothing but divergence of that vector. So hope you understood this divergence theorem. Similarly, what is the Stokes theorem? If you carefully observe these two definitions, you will find here surface integral is converted into volume integral, and here line integral is converted into surface integral. In this particular formula, differential surface and differential volumes are observed, and here differential lengths and differential surface are observed. And these terms dl, ds and dv, from where we obtained these terms? From where this came? These terms came from three coordinate systems: Cartesian, cylindrical and spherical. And we know that in this three coordinate system, in each coordinate system there are three differential surfaces: dsx, dsy, dsz. Similarly, dr, d phi, dz, etc. Only one differential volume. And how many differential lengths are there in each coordinate system? Three differential lengths in three coordinate system. So dl in Cartesian system, dl can be dx, dl can be dy, differential length can be dz. Okay, in spherical, dr or r d theta or r sin theta d phi. So on the left hand side there is single integration, on the right hand side here is double integration. Okay, so what exactly this Stokes theorem is? Stokes theorem is nothing but it states that circulation of vector field A, any vector field, obviously this law and this law is universal law. It is applicable to any vector field, not only A bar, B bar, C bar, D bar, H bar. Any vector is possible with these laws, no problem. So circulation of vector field A bar around a closed path L is equal to surface integral of curl of A over the open surface. So there is no need to go for this bookish definition. You straight away remember that surface integral of any vector field is exactly equal to volume integral of divergence of that vector field. This way you can memorize this definition. Here line integral of any vector field is equal to surface integral of curl of this operation is what? This is curl operation of A bar, curl of A bar. This is divergence of A bar. So surface line integral of any vector A bar is exactly equal to surface integral of curl of that vector field. This way you have to remember this Stokes theorem. Now next operation possible with the del operator is Laplacian of scalar. So how many operations are possible with del operator? Here it is mentioned. I explained you in the previous video. There are four operations possible with del operator. First and fourth operation is on scalars, and second and third operations are on vectors. First operation is gradient, fourth one is Laplacian on scalars, and second is divergence, and third is curl on vectors. So Laplacian of a scalar, again in three coordinate system, three different formulas are there. This is the Cartesian system formula, this is the cylindrical system formula, and this is the spherical system formula. Okay. Now fundamental laws in electrostatics. So two fundamental laws are there in electrostatics. The first law is Coulomb's law and second law is Gauss law. The Coulomb's law is the name is given in the honor of this particular scientist, Coulomb, Charles Augustin de Coulomb. He was a French military engineer as well as physicist. He formulated a law and verified it, and that law in the honor of that scientist is called as Coulomb's law. Gauss was also a scientist. Johann Carl Friedrich Gauss was a German mathematician and physicist who made a significant contribution to many fields in mathematics and science. He also formulated a law, and verified it, proved it. That's why this law is called as Gauss law in the honor of that scientist. So these two laws are very important, and these two laws are the are a stepping stone of this electrostatics. Without these two laws, electrostatic is zero. Okay, so we have to learn what is Coulomb's law, what is Gauss law, what are their applications. Applications means for which purpose this Coulomb law can be utilized, and Gauss law can also be used. So this way. Now what exactly electrostatic field is? Electrostatic field is nothing but a field created by which charge? Static electric charge. This is very important. For example, this is our static electric charge A, maybe of 1 coulomb or 2 coulomb. So due to this static electric charge, this electric field is created around it. This round electric field is created. This electric field is shown by these imaginary lines. These imaginary lines are called as electric flux lines. Okay, electric flux lines. Similarly, if the capacity of charge is increased, suppose here is 1 coulomb charge, suppose I increase the charge 10 coulomb, here I have increased the 100 coulomb charge. Therefore, as we go on increasing the charge, the field becomes stronger. How we can say the field is stronger? Because I have shown number of flux lines more in number. Large number of flux lines means density of flux lines is increased in this diagram. So that means the field created around, this is the charge, this is your 10 coulomb charge, and this is the field created around this. So this field is stable. This is stable. Why stable? Because this charge A, B and C are stationary. They are stationary. That means they are fixed at one position. They are not moving anywhere. These three charges do not move anywhere. That's why the field created is also stable. Field is also constant at this particular area. So field is not moving anywhere like this. Field is not moving anywhere. Field is stable. This field is also stable because charge A, B and C, all these charges are static charges, or they are stationary. And the field created by such a stationary charge, stationary electric charge, static electric charge is called as the word is electrostatic. Static means the electric field is stable at its location. It is not moving. It is not changing. It is not. Electric field is not changing. So static word is very important. Okay. It is not changing means what? Electric field is not changing means what? For example, at t equal to 0, suppose the electric field intensity at this point, suppose at this, let us consider this particular point, the field intensity is suppose 10 at this point at t equal to 0. After at t equal to suppose let us say 30 minutes, if I measure the electric field strength at this point, at the same point, due to the same charge, again it is found that the strength of this field is again same 10. Means at t equal to 0 I find 10, at t equal to 30 again the strength of this particular point, strength of field at this point is 10. If I measure the strength of this field at the same point at t after 1 hour, then also I find that the field strength is same 10. That means the field parameters are also constant and the field is also constant. It is independent of time. That's why it is called as, this is a static field. This field is static field. It is not moving. That means it is not changing. It is not changing. That means values of field parameters are stable. They are constant. That's why such a field is called as electrostatic field. How you can obtain this electrostatic field? If you are having a electric charge and if it is static, then whatever field you get around it is nothing but electrostatic field. As the capacity of charge is increased, the flux lines also increases and the strength of this particular field also increases. So this is the concept of electrostatic field. What are the applications of electrostatic? There are a lot of applications. One example is given here, photocopier machine or laser printer. For example, here the original document on which the physics word is mentioned is pasted here. It is the image of document is projected onto a positively charged carrying plate. And this is the example of Xerox machine or photocopier machine. This particular paper is projected on a positively charged copying plate, because the Xerox machine or photocopier machine also have how many plates? 2 plates. On the first plate, and this is second plate. On the first plate you put your paper like this, okay, and suppose this is positively charged plate and this is negatively charged plate. So paper is projected on positively charged plate, copying the plate, where light falls onto a plate, okay, light is fall onto this plate, the electric charge then leaks away, therefore the electric charge goes like this. On the second plate, negatively charged black tones particles are attracted to the remaining positive area. So the negative particles got attracted towards positive plate. Paper is placed over the copying plate, toner is transferred to the paper and heated to make it stick. The photocopy is taken off the copy plate and turned over to reveal the text. So this way the electrostatic field is created in between the two plates of photocopier machine, plate number 1, plate number 2. This is positively charged, negatively charged. One paper is put here. Once the light is thrown on it, electric field is thrown on it, automatically the electric field is created in between these two plates, and thereby you will get a Xerox of a paper. Which are the fundamental laws in magnetostatics? Biot-Savart law and Ampere-Circuitel law. Okay, so these two laws are analogous to Coulomb's law and Gauss law. In electrostatics, Coulomb's law is there. In magnetostatic, Biot-Savart law is there. Both are analogous to each other. Similarly, in electrostatics, there is a Gauss law and here is a Ampere-Circuitel law. So Coulomb's law, Gauss law, their analogous laws are Biot-Savart law and Ampere-Circuitel law in magnetostatics. This particular law is a contribution of two scientists, Jean Biot and Felix Savart. These two scientists, these were French physicists as well as mathematicians. In the honor of those scientists, that corresponding law is called as Biot-Savart law. And Ampere-Circuitel law, he was a French mathematician. He postulated one law, he proved it, verified it, and that law is called as Ampere-Circuitel law in the honor of that scientist. The term current is also identified that by this particular scientist. That's why the unit of current is ampere. Okay, so this way also their contribution can be respected. So what exactly magnetostatic field is? In the previous slide we have shown what exactly electrostatic field is. Electrostatic field is obtained due to static electric charge. So how magnetostatic field is obtained then? Magnetostatic field is obtained due to a steady current flow through a conductor. We know that, we have studied in the 12th, that whenever current flows through a conductor, magnetic field gets created around it like this. Recall back this concept which you studied in I think 10th or 12th. Whenever current flows through a conductor, if the outstretched thumb indicates the direction of current, then the curled finger indicates the direction of magnetic field. Okay, if the current flowing through this conductor is steady current, that means stable current, it is not changing, then the field created is also stable, magnetic field. For example, current flowing through this conductor is flowing downward, that's why the magnetic field direction is clockwise. If the current is flowing through this conductor up in upward direction, magnetic field created will be in anti-clockwise direction. So these are called as magnetic lines of force. We cannot see with this with our naked eyes. We cannot see these lines, but we can experience these lines. Suppose I put a magnet, there is a magnet, if I move this magnet near to this particular field, automatically this magnet gets attracted toward this field if it is kept in here somewhere here. Why? Because due to the flow of current through this conductor, magnetic field is created, and there is a magnetism to this magnet also. There is a magnetic field here, and this magnet also possesses some magnetism effect. So they gets attracted or repelled depending upon the polarity. Okay. So whenever current flowing through this conductor is steady current means suppose current here is 10 ampere. That means it is constant. There is no variable term involved in this expression. I is equal to 10 ampere. So it is a constant. That means it is a steady current. Whenever steady current flows through it, then a stable magnetic field is created around it. Stable means what? Static magnetic field means what? The same idea. Whatever we applied, whatever logic we applied here at t equal to 0, at t equal to 30, at t equal to 1 hour, at this particular point we found that the field strength is 10, 10, 10 at this point for the same setup. Similarly here also, if we measure the magnetic field strength somewhere here at this point, at t equal to 0, at t equal to 10 second, 11 second, 12 second, 20 second, etc. and so on, then magnetic field intensity or any magnetic field parameter at this point is found to be constant, same. For example, if it is 20 here at t equal to 0, then at t equal to 10 it is again 20, at t equal to 20 again it is 20, for the same setup. Okay, at any time if you measure here it will be same. That means the magnetic field created is static. The created magnetic field is static. It is a very important word. That means it is stable. That means field parameters are constant in this area. Hence such a field is called as magnetostatic field. Who created it? Steady current flow through a conductor. If the current is something like this, if I is equal to 10 t ampere, then in this case we can find that the current is not steady because it is changing with respect to time now. Then in that case magnetic field is created, but it is not static, it is dynamic magnetic field is created. This you remember. This is the foundation for unit number 4. Whenever current flowing through a conductor is dynamic in nature, then the magnetic field is produced, but it is not static, it is not stable, it is dynamic in nature. This is what the magnetostatic field is. And there is an analogy between this electric field and magnetic field. Many parameters which you find in electric field are same in magnetic field. The concept is same, idea is same. For example, in electrostatic field you will find electric force. Similarly in magnetostatic field you will find magnetic force. Here you will find Coulomb's law, there you will find Biot-Savart law, you will find Gauss law in electrostatic field, in magnetostatic you will find Ampere-Circuital law, you will find electric force, there you will find magnetic force. Here you will find who produces the electric field, electric charge, 1 coulomb, 2 coulomb, etc. And who produce the magnetic field? current I. So source element can also be compared. Field intensity term is there in electrostatics, electric field intensity. Similarly, magnetic field intensity is measured with the help of H bar, E bar, H bar. Electric flux density, magnetic flux density. Okay, relationship between T and E, relationship between B and H. Electric potential, magnetic potential. Electric flux lines, magnetic flux lines. Electric energy density, magnetic energy density. Poisson's equation for electrostatic, Poisson's equation for magnetostatics. So if you compare all these terms, you will find that electrostatics and magnetostatics are very analogous fields. So whatever ideas, whatever logic and whatever concepts you study in electrostatic, same idea, same logic is also applicable. The concepts and fundamentals are also there in magnetostatic field. So in the next coming lecture, we will start studying the concepts of electrostatic field, that means Coulomb's law, Gauss law, and magnetostatic field or magnetostatics we will cover in when we start unit number 3. So this analogy, just I want to tell you that electric field, whatever you study in electrostatic unit number 1 and 2, these concepts are required in unit number 3. Okay, so that's why you have to remember these videos very sincerely and carefully. So today we will stop. In tomorrow's lecture we will cover Coulomb's law and Gauss law. Thank you very much.